Hello again, friends. I have updated the tier list with my testing from the Golden Buddy pack, and my guesses for the upcoming set. I wanted to make some observations about why I updated it the way that I did. I won't cover everything on the list, but I will cover all of the major changes. And don't worry guys, I added Dragonites to the list this time, and they are legit Houston. Let's jump right into the thick of it. Most of our top tier decks are virtually unchanged in position. Judgement, Wizards, Skulls, Legend mixed with Bloody King, generic Armordragons, all of these are staying tier 1, and it will take a significantly higher amount of power creep to knock them out of viability. And this is also extremely unlikely to happen when you consider that potential power creep has a high chance to support these decks and make them stronger anyway. Let's start off with the deck that I think is going to be the strongest contender from the new decks, Stars. Stars function by having a combination of a set spell on the field and monsters to support that set spell. The set spell itself nullifies the effects of your opponent's cards on the field if you have a star monster on your left and your right. This card's effects also cannot be nullified. Many of the cards that can target the set spell are creatures. We're talking your Gargantua Blades, your Judgments, your Sarutobis. None of them can use their ability to get rid of this card. So you're forced to side in spells that can get rid of this card, or you have to deal with having a vanilla field indefinitely. Why is it indefinitely? Because their boss monster, Astraeos, makes all stars on your left and right indestructible, including itself. So short of bouncing monsters or running a spell that is not a set spell that can destroy set spells, you have no way to stop this card from nullifying the cards on your field. In addition to this, they have a card that allows you to ditch 2 stars and draw 2 cards. To specify, it's actually up to 2 stars, so you can just ditch 1 and draw 1 if you want to, which makes it incredibly versatile. It doesn't cost any gauge. That's amazing. They also have at least 3 size 0 stars, so getting a 2-1-0 field out and being able to have those triple attacks is going to be very possible. In addition, they also have a card that allows them to attack even if they have a creature in their center. We haven't seen all of the Actronite support from this set, but we do know that all of them are going to be stars and attribute as well, and they will likely have some kick-ass interaction with this deck. So while we don't have all of the details for stars, what details we do have definitely point to this deck performing very, very well. Moving on to the next deck, all I can say is that it's about time. Ancient World has struggled for so long, being the butt monkey of the game for its entire existence. Now they get to have some revenge. Raging Spirits are an entire archetype of units that have Godol's redirect ability. This means that they can play open center and redirect the attacks to themselves. In addition to shutting down Penetrate completely, this also enables the use of the new attack negate, which is a battle or a circle clone. So if you don't have a creature in the middle, negate the attack. This gives Ancient World actual turn 1 defense for the first time ever. Additionally, this also opens up the use of weapons, which are very likely to be coming out with these Raging Spirits. If not, the new Buddy Sword, which is a 5k 2 crit weapon with Penetrate, if you have your Buddy monster out, will be sufficient to start the world off with. The real kicker as to why it's jumped straight to tier 1 though, is a combination of 2 cards. Yes, they have a boatload of size 3s with lifelink 2 that can redirect attacks, and that's cool and all, but they have a size 3 7k attack, 2 critical, 6k defense with Soul Guard from the deck that has the redirect and counterattack. It is a completely superior Demongodol arc in all aspects, barring size technically, because it being a higher size means that you can't play size 1s. But it being size 3 makes it immune to a lot of the things that counter Godol, like Epic Fail, Magical Goodbye, and Death Grip. With so much resistance to the potential threats that come with being size 3, in addition to having that 6k defense, it has made Dual Dragons completely obsolete in all means, barring offensive weapons currently, and discarding to destroy weapons, which is an effect Arc has that this unit does not have. And while we haven't seen the offensive weapons that Raging Spirits are going to get yet, I have a feeling that they're going to be as strong. Well, probably not quite as strong as Danger World weapons, but they're still going to be up there, and it's still going to make the deck strong. The last card that is making this archetype shine really, really well is their size 0. It makes all lifelink for your Raging Spirits 0. So yeah, not only do you get these massive walls that can stall for days, now you also get to take no damage when your opponent finally gets around them. The draw power of Ancient World is icing on the cake, with Divine Dragon Creation, Dragon Emperor Legend, and a new card, which is pitch a size 3, pay 1 life, draw 2 cards. They will have no issues whatsoever getting their setup, something dual dragons struggle with frequently. Rounding out the list of newbies, we have Hero World. I personally hate Hero World. I love robots. I love the thematics. I like becoming the robot / Power Ranger / Sailor Scout. That's all cool. But what bothers me is how undercosted absolutely everything is in Hero World. They value Transform at 1 gauge and 1000 power and stats. Literally, Transform cost as a creature is 1k less stats for 1 gauge for Transform. So, because they also have 1k more stats than Dragon World for their size 1s, if we just compare Einder to 1000 Rapier Dragon, Einder is a 5/2/1, 1000 Rapier is a 5/2/1. They are the exact same card, only Einder can also pay a gauge and become a weapon with defense that you can use to bonk things with. And it doesn't cost anything to play it as a creature. So, if you compare it to a standard vanilla from Dragon World, this card is completely overpowered. But what if we compare it to items? Rampage Sonic is a 5/3/3 size 2 in Hero World. It loses 1k in stats for being a size 2 to become an item with defense. Let's compare it to the other 5/3 items in Dragon World. Dragon Blade, Drago Brave. Pay a gauge and discard a card from your hand. Okay, so we have this 5/3/3 that gives you defense as a weapon, and it's just pay 1 gauge. It doesn't have to discard a card. And it can also be used as a size 2 creature for no cost. What about Drago Breach? Pay a gauge, pay 1 life. Alright, still costs more. Still doesn't have defense, still isn't a creature that can be played for free. So yeah, they didn't cost transform properly at all. But surely, with such beefy creatures, they have Danger World level spell support, and can only have mess spells, right? Guys? No. They have a spell negate, which is an Abracadabra clone. They have a gain 2 life, stand yourself counter spell if you destroy 2 creatures on the field. They have an Abyss Symphony clone. They have a Dragonic Thunder clone. Oh, let's not forget that they have a spell that's just gain 4 gauge. It's not even pay life. It's just gain 4 gauge. No cost. What? They have Magic and Ancient World level spell support in spite of having incredibly strong undercosted creatures. But I mean, you know, they only have a little gauge fixing, right? Wrong. They can gain 4 gauge, and that isn't even necessarily something they have to do because they have a Genjiro Saki clone, something that hasn't been given out to any other worlds other than Magic World. Why are they getting a Genjiro Saki clone? Okay, but it's a Genjiro Saki clone, right? It's just a clone. No. It's completely superior because it has more polarized stats, so it's got the 5k attack and the 1k defense. And it also has a secondary effect that when you cast a spell, gives 1000 power and defense to another card on the field. It's completely superior. Why? The thing that I hate the most about everything in Hero World, though, is that when you, as a player, become a superhero and you have that defense, and you use their superhero Drago Energy clone, you get counterattack. Now, I don't mind about using that as an attack negate. You gain defense, your defense is higher, that's fine, that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that if I hit you, if my attack is still higher than your defense, you still get a counterattack me, and you can still destroy my creature, even though my attack hit. Like, if that was against a normal creature, that creature would have been destroyed. So now you have to deal with, you know, your opponent has the option to play a card that is defensive and control and costs no gauge on themselves. That's bullshit. They also have a spell negate, which is just launching them straight into the Cancer meta. And I know I'm ranting and I apologize. I hate how poorly they designed Hero World. It's not unbeatable. It's not even the best deck. My problem with it is that it created a huge gap between what decks were tier 1.0 to 1.1 and the decks that are above tier 2. Most of the changes to the tier list are being caused by everything shifting down because of this gap created by Hero World. The tier 0.8 to 1.1 decks can all fight Hero World on a relatively even footing. Anything beneath that starts to struggle from the power creep. I can only hope that we don't get all of the overpowered promos that Hero World has in Japan, specifically Drago Shovel. Drago Shovel, if you're unaware, is pay 1 gauge. When this card enters the field, destroy a size 2 or less creature on your opponent's field. If you are transformed, deal 1 damage to your opponent. This is on a 5/2/5 size 2 body. You get the stats of a size 2 Dragon World mover, and the destruction, and the damage effect for only 1 gauge. 1 gauge! This is not a good example of making balanced cards, Bushiroad. Did I mention they have a spell negate? Well, I'm going to move on. Hero World makes me cringe, so let's freshen things up a bit. Starting out tier 1.01, we have Drum.dek. This got a huge boost because we are getting the promo SD Drum very soon. It lets you pay a gauge and place a drum from your drop zone on top of it by paying its call cost. For your soul guard from deck drums, this also means they will enter with 2 soul. Yeah. You can also SD drum into an SD drum into a regular drum, giving you 3 soul drum for 3 gauge. And it only costs you 1 card to do. The only downside to SD drum is that if your opponent responds with a counter and bounces or destroys SD drum, you have to pay the gauge, and you also don't get the call. Still, you can see how this card is amazing. Rounding out tier 1.01, we have Control Purgatory Knights. I was really concerned that Purgatory Knights were awful for a really long time because I simply hadn't fought anyone good using them. But I was patient. I bode my time until all of the Purgatory Knights cards were on Buddyfight area. Then I conducted my testing with my own build. They are every bit as good as they're hyped up to be, so long as you aren't running Crush That Body and Distortion Punisher. They have several easy outs for card advantage, big pushes, amazing control spells. All you need to do is play the deck properly. In order to play the deck properly, you just wait until your opponent is at 4 or less life and then push with Demios. That's it. The common mistake I see unskilled players do is on their very first turn attacking, if they go second, they'll just call Demios a size 0, a size 1 in the weapon, and they'll just sack their entire field with Demios just because they can. This opens up needless counter timings for them to respond to Demios' ability with death grips and goodbyes, making you waste up to 2 cards permanently just for trying to push at the wrong moment. It also means that you can't use your dark energies in response because you use Demios' effect. If they tried to do that preemptively, they would lose out on being able to do that because of the dark energies saving your Demios. Sometimes it's wiser to bait out their death grips or what have you so that you can keep your field. Other times you have forever in your hand and you just don't give 2 shits. But regardless, once you commit to the battle phase as Purgatory Knights, you're not getting any extra attacks than what you currently have on the field. But I digress. Playing this deck with a hefty amount of control cards, taking your opponent down to 3 or 4 life per turn, then pushing when they are going to have real issues dealing with it instead of while they're at 10 life and you need every single attack to hit in order to win. Pushing when they're low is how the deck should be played. Play it control, and then push when they're low. Simple. That makes it tier 1.01. Otherwise, you'll find out where it sits later. For our tier 1.05 decks, we have Dragon Knights and just Dragon Knights. Knight counter is the sex. The only thing keeping this deck from tier 1 altogether is the fact that size 3 decks, Raging Spirits especially, are going to get more popular, making Knight counter cease to be the ultimate answer to all of life's problems. It still has amazing matchups to just about everything else, only losing out to creature destruction abilities pre-battle like Judgement, size 3 decks in particular, and decks that draw into Cancer to stop the counter, which would be most of the tier 1 decks that have their spell negates. For tier 1.1, we have 72 pillars and backdrop, and these decks haven't changed much in their standings or power levels, so we're just going to move past them. We also have Shinsengumi coming in here. Shinsengumi with Soshi and Skies in your hand is dirty. They can also run Knight counter to have all of this destruction, but having less gauge fixing than the traditional Dragon Knight deck makes it less consistent. They can run Tomoe, but they lose out on consistency for doing so as well, because it's not a Shinsengumi. Iwamoto is a bro in the deck, but you can't use both Iwamoto and Soshi, which is the main reason that you'd want to run Iwamoto in the first place. Still, if you can get out the double Soshi and then Skies to your hands, you can pretty much destroy anything ever, and it's super dirty. They have some mean control to clear out the opponent's center, and then who cares if Kondo has 2k attack? You can just ram them in the face with a bunch of 4 critical attacks straight at them, and there's not much they can do about it. Apply Wolf of Miibus and Dragon Shields for more defense and control, and you have a solid-ass deck. Now, here's where the old tier list and that lovely balance that we had going for ourselves in Set 5 just gets ripped to shreds. Tier 1.3 is gone. We jump from 1.1, which is practically top tier, all the way down to tier 1.5, which is a good deck, but not top tier. Still competitive and viable, but not amazing. This is mostly the fault of Hero World, but both Raging Spirits and Stars are also adding pain to the tier list. We previously had top tier decks, great decks, and good decks. We no longer have these great decks anymore. They've all shifted either up or down. The biggest surprises in tier 1.5 would be Magic Burn and Demongodol Arc. Magic Burn is completely shut down by Drago Keeper, which is getting popular because some Tim Power Gamer guy keeps dick riding it like no tomorrow. Aegis also counters it completely, and those were the tier 1 decks that Magic Burn used to have solid matchups to, Legend World and Dragon World. So they really only beat Purgatory Knights consistently out of the tier 1.1 and higher decks. So that's why it's dropping down to tier 1.5, because anyone who sides in a single card and they draw into it wins. And you just can't call a deck good that can be instantly beaten by single cards. Demongodol Arc was already having some growing pains with the power creep. All of this destruction was starting to be able to hit it right when Demongodol Arc really couldn't handle it. It didn't have the gauge to keep up, and it can't reset after it loses Arc. So it went from tier 0.9 in set 4 to tier 1.01 in set 5, all the way down to tier 1.5 for the new set. I also don't see it getting any better when it's just a completely inferior version of the Raging Spirits. It is still a solid deck, but it's kind of like Water Ninjas versus Water Skulls. Water Skulls are practically the exact same deck, only better. Why wouldn't you run it with Skulls? In much the same fashion, why wouldn't you just run Raging Spirits? It's better than Arc. It does everything it does. And that finishes up tier 1.5. Tier 1.75 is the new teetering location between a viable tournament deck and not being a viable tournament deck. These decks are all strong in their own right, but have severe weaknesses to particular matchups, or have strategies that many decks have several answers for. I'll speak on Water Ninjas for a moment. It's practically the same as Water Skulls, only you replace having a revivable 8k wall with having all of your monsters be one type, Ninja, to increase the consistency of Steel Ball and make Kibashachi a potentially 12k defense counterattacker. It's taking away a lot and not adding much, but the base is still the same, so they can get away with it because Water in general is just a strong deck. They can also run weapons that aren't Gale Sword due to Art of Heat Haze giving them move, but their 8k defense size 1 is only one critical to compensate, so you're just trading criticals here or there. For Tier 2, it's finally happened. Decks have reached the point where they're okay, viable but not competitive. This is where Adil Diablos, Armorknights, Thunder Knights, and Goldritter are all sitting. I've discussed the issues with Thunder Knights and Goldritter before, so I'll leave those be. Diablos went up in the tiers, but then the tiers all shifted down because of Hero World, so it ended up in the same spot, which is sad. Since Raging Spirits are significantly stronger as a deck, that's just the way things are. Armorknight Ace builds actually got stronger too with the new promo that lets you discard a card to add a card from your drop zone into the soul of your weapon. But until they get a weapon searcher, they will stay tier 2. Hopefully the next batch of support that Armorknight Ace gets will bring them up again. Tier 2.5 saddens me, as these would have been the tier 2 decks from before, but the power creep shifted them all down. Pain Field, Deathstrike is one of my favorite decks. Punishing people if they negate your attacks by dealing damage to them and making them lose gauge, but also punishing them if they let it hit because Spectral Strike deals damage to them and destroys their creature. I love the deck. Gruen is one of the strongest cards in the game. It is one of the best designed cards in the game. It's unfortunate that the deck as a whole just doesn't have what it takes to be competitive, especially with so many 1k attackers in the face of Hero World's 3 to 5k defense as players. With a borderline auto loss in the Hero World matchup, they just can't get out of tier 2.5, and they likely never will. They will need some really major changes to how they function in order for that to happen. And the reliance on having to draw into Blix, which counteracts drawing into Gruen and how amazing Gruen is, and also kills your gauge, really is hurting it super bad for that matchup. Dragon Ein is about as low as you would expect. Short of God handing Divine Dragon Creation and Dragon Emperor Legend turn 1, you pretty much always lose. Ozzy isn't good. The weapon isn't great. The starting hand kills you. The throne variants are all garbage. The size 3 build is the strongest, but it's still fighting that uphill battle. It just doesn't have what it takes to be a competitive deck, and that's because of that 4-card starting hand. As anticlimactic as it is to say, there's really nothing else new in the Tier 3 or Tier 3.5 sections other than everything shifting down. I do want to make the point that these are all just my opinions from a large amount of playtesting. All of the new decks coming out in the new set, barring Hero World, are simply my best guesses, based on card support that we've seen, and hints on what they should be getting. All of the RR pluses have been revealed, so I am confident that these guesses are close to the actuality of how these decks will perform. Finally, this list is a fluid, changing structure. Some things will drop, some things will rise. But the only time major increases or decreases will occur in the list are when new cards are released. That being said, thank you for watching and have a good one.